Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose. DJ, you gotta fade us all the way out. You gotta fade us all the way out because we gotta talk to the people. My, oh my, do we gotta talk to the people. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. And boy, do we have another exciting episode for you. This is episode number 175. We are slowly making our way to the 200th episode mark. Crazy how time flies, eh? 170, 175. I can't believe we're just climbing these numbers. But anyways, always good to have you lovely ladies and gentlemen joining us for every episode of the podcast. Always amazing whenever we take a look and we see, what countries are tuning into the podcast. Let me give some quick shout outs to some of these countries that have been tuning in. So United States, always glad to have you. Trinidad and Tobago, what's going on? Barbados, Germany, Australia, Antigua, Bahamas, Jamaica, Norway. Who else do we got inside here? We got Brazil, we got the Caymans, Puerto Rico, Bangladesh, Bahamas, Thailand, Norway, Russia, China, Indonesia. Great to have you. Namibia, Uganda, St. Vincent, Virgin Islands, and South Africa. Great to see all of you tuning in from all over the world to the podcast each and every single month. Now, today we're going to be talking about the foreign exchange situation that's been happening in Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, you don't have to, you could just jump online and you can kind of get an idea as to, the problems that are happening. But I think with the amount of emails and DMs that I've been getting with people that have been reaching out to kind of just voice their frustrations or voice their frustrations, but also reaching out, trying to look for solutions. I definitely wanted to kind of take some time with this episode and kind of dive into how I have been navigating this situation, because it's very fluid and there really isn't much choices that you have when it comes to navigating the foreign exchange problem that we are facing in Trinidad and Tobago. And it really is a problem, and it's a problem for so many people. So I'll start off by saying that I try to pay attention to the comments online regarding particular topics, because you want to get a pulse check and see where the country is at, or what's being said, and just get an idea, get a feel for how people are feeling about particular topics. And this one's been a polarizing topic for the past couple of weeks, because we have seen here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have seen two of our banks make some major announcements. It started off 2 weeks ago with Scotiabank making the announcement that the Visa debit cards that they have, usually you would have been able to get 1,000, not even close. Usually you would have been able to get at least 100 USD per day off of the cards. So like if you were traveling and you wanted to use your card at the point of sale, or you wanted to take out some hard cash and go to an ATM and withdraw some money, you could have withdrawn 100 USD per day with the Scotiabank Visa debit cards. And then about 2 months ago, they reduced it to $50 per day, and they capped it at, I believe it was either 1,000 or 1,200 US for the month, something along those lines. And then 2 weeks ago, they made the announcement that you no longer have access to any funds on that Visa debit card. So that's brought right down to zero, right? They're no longer giving out any USD on those cards. And then they also reduced the USD allocation on their credit cards from 10,000, and they reduced it down to 2,000 all credit cards. And if you have the black card, the Aero MasterCard Black, then they've reduced that to 5,000 US per cycle, right? That's not a lot of money. 5,000 US is not a lot of money, right? Even if you're not in business, you want to go buy my MacBook Pro cost me 2,500 US. You know what I mean? Like $5,000 US is not no kind of money whatsoever in the global context of things, right? Think about your devices. You have phones that cost you 1,500, 2,000. You have phones that cost 2,000 US, right? So, and that's the black card. Regular cards, all the other cards outside of their black card are 2,000 US dollars. So even if you wanted to go and purchase a new computer, you're not getting that. You want to travel, my goodness, where are you going? We're at this point where you can no longer, on one cycle, buy a plane ticket, book hotel and accommodations. God forbid you have a family and you're rolling with more than one person. Where are you going? What a lot of people don't realize is the ramifications that this is causing. So, seeing a lot of comments where people are just talking about, hey, the frivolous spending is what's bleeding the foreign exchange reserves. Then you have people saying things like, oh, we have champagne tastes in TNT, and you need to stop the online shopping. And I don't know why people keep on thinking that it's online shopping that's all people are using their credit cards for. And it really is insane. You have people that are in school that buy their books, pay for their tuition, all of the money that, like, let's just say if they took a loan to access the funds outside of Trinidad and Tobago, the only way to access those funds is if you have a credit card. So if you take out a loan and the loan goes into a bank account and you want to access those funds, you got to put it on a credit card and use the money on the credit card to be able to do what you got to do, right? If you're somebody who is a pensioner, but you no longer live in Trinidad, but you still get a pension because, you've been making your deposits for how many years. If you want to access that money, people have been using their credit cards to access that money. So there's so many different scenarios. If you have a medical procedure, right? Look, the Prime Minister himself doesn't do his yearly checkups in Trinidad, and anything that has to happen for him, he doesn't do in Trinidad. So there's a lot of people that fly out and utilize services outside of TNT for medical procedures, and that's normal. People do that all over the world, right? How are you doing that when you don't have the allocation for US to be able to pay for these things? All right? I have friends in business. I mean, we all know business people. We have a lot of people that are running their businesses off of their credit cards, and that's how they're accessing the outside markets. That's how they're purchasing raw materials to make a lot of the things that they produce. It's through their credit cards. So there's a lot of people that are affected by the foreign exchange situation here in TNT. And now that RBC has also reduced their allocation from 6,000 USD to 2,000 USD per month, the word is that all of the banks would have reduced their USD allocation on their credit cards to 2,000 USD by the end of the year. That puts major strain on everybody, even me. I'm here in Thailand right now, and I still have clients in Trinidad and Tobago. They pay me in TT dollars. Now that, I'm not there, I rely on getting the money onto a credit card to get the money outside of TNT. If the allocations are minimal, how do you get the money out? They're essentially paying you, but that money's no good outside of TNT. So there's some major issues that are happening because of this Trinidad and Tobago foreign exchange problem. Now I don't want to get into all of the problems. Like I said, the reasons why it's happening is has been widely discussed for a very long time, and there's a number of contributing factors. That's at play with the foreign exchange. But if you are tuning in and you kind of want to have an idea as to what's going on, I saw somebody kind of post a kind of like a little surface level recap that I'm just happen to be looking at. So I'll just kind of read off this just so you have an idea as to what is happening. So the person kind of broke it down into a couple of points, right? So he says, one, the central bank does not have the foreign exchange and the volumes required to supply the demand for it, right? So yeah, that's true. The Forex that is given to the banks is then going to selected businesses. That is true as well. Let's back up to point number one. The central bank does not have Forex in the volumes that are required. And that's because the country is simply not generating outside investment, or they're not generating revenue from exports to supply the demand of the entire country. Because at the end of the day, it's a very small pie and people are fighting over crumbs at this point, trying to get some foreign exchange to handle whatever their affairs are. Okay? It's not just for online shopping, folks, but the country's not generating enough foreign exchange in order to supply the people, right? Then when it does come in and whatever is here is going to selected businesses. Think about all of the biggest businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, and they tend to get the lion's share of the foreign exchange. Now, on one hand, people are saying, it's unfair and the distribution of the foreign exchange is not even, and I agree. At the same time, too, on the flip side of it is that the argument that the businesses can make is that, well, they need to get the foreign exchange because they're the ones that are employing the most amount of people in the country. So if they're not getting the foreign exchange to run their business, then think about all the hundreds and thousands of people that would no longer be employed and would be on the breadline because the company isn't able to handle their scenes. So again, double-edged sword. It's not fair that they're getting all the foreign exchange, but then if they don't get it and then everybody has to go home packing, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? The third point that he kind of summed up was we have a culture of importing food that has become a major cause for concern. Yeah, our import bill for food is extremely high. There was an article about a week ago talking about how the wholesalers that are bringing in a lot of the basic items like rice, onions, potatoes, oil, you name it, right? There's a whole lot of items that are being brought in. And the people that are bringing those items in are basically saying that they owe their suppliers abroad millions of US dollars. Like they were talking about how one supplier flew into Trinidad and Tobago to try to beg the banks to release the payments because he's owed over 10 million US dollars from local suppliers, right? Local suppliers are also being blacklisted because they don't have the money to pay their bills. Not that they don't want to pay the bills, but the foreign exchange is just simply not available for them to pay their bills. And we import damn near everything. I don't think people understand that. We import damn near every single thing. Even what we do export still takes import because we still have to import the raw materials to create a lot of the products that we have for export. So we're still importing at a ridiculous rate, and we're just not exporting enough that is generating any real money for us. And the country's reserves are, they're being managed so that way, the core bills of the country are being paid, and everything else as well, it's salt for you, all right? The fourth point that he brought about was our focus on producing multitudes of people with administrative management degrees and engineers that do not produce equipment, tools, and gadgets for sale. The lack of exportable products means we have little to export to earn foreign exchange. Again, very true. When you look at a lot of the degrees, and I talked about this some years ago, right? And this is not just a TNT thing. I think we're just feeling it a lot more than some of these other countries. But in general, people tend to go into fields that are highly saturated for whatever their purposes are. Maybe it's parental pressure because we know, especially immigrant parents, this is not just limited to Caribbean people, but immigrant parents are always forcing us to go and become doctors, engineers, lawyers. Those are typically the three main fields that we're always encouraged or forced to get into, right? And in bigger markets like America, the US, the UK, yada, 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 there's obviously going to be a need for a lot more of those people. But when you have such a small country, such a small economy, 1.5 million people, how many lawyers and engineers and doctors do you need? Where we're graduating these people in the thousands every single year. And then where do they go? We aren't producing people with the skill sets that are in demand. I put out an article the other day in regards to Coursera talking about the most in-demand skills in 2024. Globally in-demand skills for 2024. And when you go through the list for the business skills, the data science skills, and the technology skills, though none of those skills are being taught in any of our universities, right? None of them are being taught in any of our universities. And if they are, it's usually like a short course or something along those lines, but nothing really substantial. So we're still producing people with a lot of the same skill sets that are oversaturated for such a small place, but then those are not the things that we need right now to solve the problems that we are facing. We're graduating people in spaces that ultimately cannot help us in the long run because, again, you're in an oversaturated market, and people need to start thinking about the skills that are in demand and start to go in those routes. And even when the local universities are not teaching a lot of these things, you're not limited to learning or doing degrees in Trinidad. There are still a lot of degrees and stuff you can do online. There are short courses and skill sets and certifications you can do online. So you're not limited to just learning here in Trinidad. But because we're graduating so many people in the same fields, medicine, law, and engineering, and we just don't have they're not in a position to really help us in the areas that we need, it's just contributing to more madness happening in TNT. And then he had another point of the criminal elements are negatively influencing businesses, right? Right now, the businesses are being tormented. We have an extremely high rise in extortion. We have a high rise in kidnapping of businesses. Then you add in the fact that businesses aren't getting foreign exchange to conduct their business, and you have more businesses that are deciding to close down because ultimately they cannot continue and continue to incur a lot of these losses. and continue to afford the amount of money it costs them on security to protect their investments and protect their employees and the stores and whatnot. It's a lot happening, right? And you have a lot of businesses that are closing down and they're migrating because at the end of the day, at least they're not going to be, just getting murdered going about their day-to-day lives. But again, one of the biggest challenges is that after the business decides to close down and migrate, they still can't get their money outside of Trinidad because of the foreign exchange problem. Again, there are more things that are contributing to the drain of the foreign exchange problem. We have things like we're importing too many cars. The car industry, the automobile industry is one of the biggest drains of foreign exchange, and it's kind of hard to say. Personally, I feel like maybe there needs to be like a 2 to 5 year ban on bringing in all new vehicles. Like I'm talking about new vehicles, right? I think there should be a 2 to 5 year ban on new vehicles from being brought into the country because it's a major drain on the foreign exchange reserves. But then we also have a major traffic problem in Trinidad. And that's because we have too many vehicles on the road. And with the crime situation, more people feel better off in their own vehicles and rather than taking public transportation. So when you put all those things together, obviously more people are going to be buying vehicles, and then we don't have a reliable public transportation system for people to say, yeah, you know what, yeah, let's. It makes sense to stop bringing in the vehicles because hey, we could still at least we have a reliable public transportation system. We have a lot of maxis and taxis that are they've stopped working late hours and they finish up early, so you have you have more reason to go and buy a vehicle. You have the criminal element that are robbing down. They're robbing a whole lot of rideshare drivers as well. So rideshare drivers aren't feeling safe doing their jobs. All of these little things are impacting the situation one way or the next, right? One way or the next. So again, I say, whilst we should be able to say we need to put a 2 to 5 year ban on importing new vehicles, we don't need them. Again, still hard to say given the fact that we have all of these other problems that are forcing people to go out and get a vehicle. And yeah, it's a lot, but it's all contributing. Again, there's a lot of things that are contributing to why we are unable to generate the foreign exchange and why the foreign exchange reserves are being depleted, right? I think the biggest problem is that we've kicked the can for so long that there is no short or medium term solutions that is going to make sense. I think any short term solution is going to be drastic. It's going to be drastically felt. And there may be more cons to any of these solutions because we're seeing a lot of solutions being talked about in the public, talking about how like the IMF over the weekend made a recommendation that we should be remove all the restrictions on the USD. We should be devaluing the dollar or floating the dollar, right? That way, people get access to the they get access to the USD I'll bet a much higher rate, right? But the reality is that the minute they do that, the cost of living goes up 500%. So that's why the government doesn't want to be the government to do that, right? I think it's probably the best course of action, but they don't want to be the government to do that. So they're not going to do that. They've come out and emphatically said that is what they're not going to be doing, right? So any talk about generating foreign exchange at this point is a long-term vision because we're not about to go and build up new industries overnight. We're not going to build up new industries in the next year, in the next 2 years. Any industry that we build up to a point where it's now going to generate a high ROI to really help us push our foreign exchange reserves in the right direction, where where people can start to get access to USD and conduct their business again. That's not happening in the next 10 years. So there is no real short to medium term solutions. Right now there just needs to be a long-term vision with how we fix this in the long term. But because there is no short or medium term fixes, we all have to now figure out how are we personally going to navigate these murky waters, because help is not coming anytime soon. It can't, right? And that's just being realistic. There's nothing that could be done in a short to medium term that's going to allow you to get access to the types of money that you need to conduct your business, whether that is actual business, whether that's medical business, whether you just want to go and take trips, whether you just want to go and shop online, whatever you want to do with your money. All right? Like, you don't have to justify that to anybody. But the reason why people feel like they have to justify it now is because you're being told that, hey, we have champagne taste and we are now wasting precious foreign exchange. Even though it's your money, you're working for your money. If you want to go and spend your money on donuts, that's completely up to you. You've worked hard for your money. But this is the reality of the situation. You are now getting blamed for making things like purchases of donuts and other frivolous things because it's frivolous and you're wasting USD when it could be going to somebody else. That's the rhetoric that's being pushed right now. So there is no short-term or medium-term solutions that's going to fix our problem. So how do we navigate this, right? How do we navigate this? Now, I can only speak for me. And whilst, I've put this out in an article, I've put this out on YouTube, kind of showing people how I've been, how I have personally been navigating this foreign exchange crisis. I see it. I think it's been a really good discussion. There's a lot of people that agree. There's a lot of people that disagree. And I also think that overall, when the dust settles, I was in a meeting with the UN, the Ministry of Trade, and some other high-level executives in a meeting working on building the national e-commerce strategy for Trinidad and Tobago. And we were talking about these exact issues, and I was able to highlight everything that I do to navigate this situation, given the times that we are in. So even though there's a lot of people that have, watched the content and agreed, there's been a lot of people that read the content, watched the videos and disagreed, I think the conversation is helpful overall because people are seeing how much you have to do in order to navigate it. And standing pat and not doing anything at all is you're pretty much shooting your own self in the head and killing yourself and killing your business, right? If you are you still need to navigate the foreign exchange situation because you still need access to things outside of Trinidad. No ifs, ands, or buts. Regardless of whether you agree with what I've been saying and what I've been showing or not disagree, whatever the case is, we still need to navigate this, right? And I don't see many people with solutions on how to navigate this. So I also think this is also why this has really kind of blown up a lot because people don't have ways to navigate the foreign exchange crisis. So let me talk about how I've been navigating it. And hopefully it gives you some insights. Hopefully you're able to take something away from it and apply it to your own situation. And if it helps you, great, no problem. If it doesn't help you, cool. At least you get a better understanding or greater appreciation as to how dire the situation is that we are facing. Okay? Even if you don't agree with what I do, that's fine. I think you just need to appreciate how bad the situation is that we have to go to such lengths to be able to conduct our day-to-day business. Okay? Now that we got that out the way, let's talk about how I've been navigating. So the starting process to navigating is having the right accounts. So I've had to open up I opened up an account in the US with Bank of America. You can open up a non-citizen's account with Bank of America, TD, Wells Fargo, Chase. Those are just some of the banks that you could open up a non-citizen's account where you do not need a tax ID. You don't need a tax ID. You don't need a TTIN number. You don't need that stuff. You don't need a social security number. A non-citizen's bank account. You're pretty much just coming in with your ID. Some banks want a proof of address of where you're staying at in the States. Others don't. So again, choose your bank wisely. Ask the right questions. I opened up my non-citizens account with Bank of America. I also opened up a Wise account a few years ago. So those are the two main accounts that I use to navigate this problem. You could also open up a bank account in another Caribbean country, right? So check out countries like Grenada, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Bahamas. Go check out the banks over there. Go reach out to them and see what the criteria is for opening up a non-citizen's bank account. And they will let you know. And yeah, you could always open up an account in another Caribbean island as well. And that's a place where you're going to be able to now navigate your U.S. currency and get access to your own funds. Because right now, the problem is that if you open up a local USD account here in Trinidad and Tobago, if you start to generate your own foreign exchange, when you put those funds into the bank is not giving you access to those funds. So even if you're putting it on a credit card, the limits are extremely low. If you ask for the money in cash, hey, you have 2,000 USD in your local USD account. You're like, hey, I need to get 500 USD. The banks are telling you, nope, you can't have it. They'll put you in a queue. And then, if they call you back, that's if they call you back, they may acknowledge your request and provide you with the amount that you've requested. But most people are coming out and straight up saying that they've been in the queue for months. Some people have said that they've applied for their own money years later and still have not received anything from the banks. So clearly it's very hit and miss. A lot of times it's also who you know in the bank, whether or not you're going to get through with accessing your own money. What the banks are able to do, though, is that if you do have your own USD in your local account, if you have your own USD in your local account, you can actually go and wire that money out into another bank account. But since most people are not generating their own USD and they're trying to buy USD from the bank, it's always going to be salt for you right now. But if you do have your own USD in your account and they're not giving you access to the cash, you can wire transfer that money. So let's just say if you have a friend or family and you're going to be traveling, you could wire transfer that money to them and they'll have access to it, and then you can go and handle your business. Maybe they give you the cash in person when they see it, or maybe that money gets put onto their credit cards, and if you have to go buy a flight or pay for something, they could pay for it on your behalf. But again, that's another kind of workaround that you can kind of pay attention to. So after you open up your own accounts, right? So you have your own accounts. You have your Wise account. You have your foreign bank account, whether it be in the States or another country. Those accounts are needed so that you can handle your business. Then the second thing is how I've been navigating the foreign exchange problem is that I've been focusing more and more on generating my own USD. So I am trying more and more to get clients throughout the Caribbean region and diaspora, because when anybody outside of TNT pays me, they're going to be paying me in US dollars. So rather than bring that money back into Trinidad where I will not have access to the money, I would have them pay me to my Bank of America account or to my PayPal or to my Wise account, because once it hits any of those three, then I have access to the actual funds that I have now earned, and I can now, do whatever I got to do, whether it is buying things, whether it's traveling, whatever, medical, whatever, anything outside of Trinidad. I have my own USD and I have no problem spending that money. I'm here in Thailand. All I use is my Wise card and my Bank of America card to pay my rent, to buy groceries, to do whatever the hell I need to do, right? So if I didn't have those things in place and I was stuck with my Trinidad credit card and my Trinidad bank cards, well, then I'm only limited to whatever the banks tell me I'm allowed to do with my card, right? Half the time they're blocking the card because you've maxed out your USD limit for the month and you clearly did not remember, or they're blocking your card because of suspicious activity. You go somewhere, you swipe your card, suspicious activity, they're flagging your card and they're causing you more headache than, you know. So anyway, second step for me has been focusing on generating my own foreign exchange. So getting more clients outside of Trinidad, when they do pay me, making sure that they pay either my PayPal account, my Wise account, or my Bank of America. They could, wire transfer the money over there. That way I get immediate access to my funds and there's no limitations on what I do with my money. So that's step 2. The third thing is you have to learn how to convert your TT dollars into USD. And this is a big one, right? Because this is the challenge. So even when you have people, as I said earlier, even when you have business owners that have sold everything and they have migrated, getting the money outside of Trinidad is damn near impossible for them because nowhere in the world is accepting TT dollars. You cannot go to another country and give them TT. They're not accepting it. They're not accepting TT. So therefore, the money is only good in Trinidad and Tobago. That is why I say that we are financially trapped, because you cannot bring your money outside of TNT and you cannot convert it at any bank outside of Trinidad and Tobago. And you are limited to only what they give you on your credit cards. So converting TT dollars to USD is one of the hardest things. So how I've been navigating it, there are 2 ways that I've been navigating converting my TT dollars to USD. Number 1 is Western Union offers a direct deposit option. So I can give Western Union my TNT dollar and I can give them my Bank of America account or my Wise banking information, and I can do a direct deposit into those accounts. So I can go to them with 5,000 TT dollars and say, hey, here's my banking information for Wise and here's my banking information for Bank of America. Here's 5,000 TT. Please directly deposit that into my accounts, and then they can go and do that, right? And it takes 2 to 3 business days for the money to show up. The rates, they tell you on the day what the rate is to convert the money, or you could visit their website so that you can see what the cost is for them to do that transaction, right? So that's one way that I've been navigating it, using Western Union to convert the funds. The second method, and this is going to take, I've said this before, this is going to take a bit of it's a 2-man game, so to speak. So I use PayPal to convert the funds as well, right? And how that works is you have a friend, and that friend has a credit card, you have a credit card, both of you guys have your limits, right? I would give my TT dollars to my friend to put on their credit card. Let's just say their limit is $5,000, right? And rather than me putting that money on my credit card and then going spending 5,000 US online, shopping or doing whatever, right? When you're spending your money on your credit card, you're subjected to the limitations of the bank. No problem. It is what it is. So what I would do is I would give the money to my friend. My friend would put the money on their credit card. Because our banks have blocked direct uploads into Wise, most of our credit cards cannot do a direct upload into Wise to put your funds in directly. And here in PayPal, PayPal in the Caribbean doesn't allow you to upload money into your digital wallet as well, your PayPal wallet. So if you're one of the people with a credit card that Wise in Trinidad, if you're one of the people that are in Trinidad and you have your Wise account and you have a credit card that's not been blocked by your particular bank, then great. You could just directly upload the money into Wise to kind of get rid of your restrictions. So like I said, I'm not just going to go and use my credit card to make the purchases. I would give the money to my friend. My friend would then log into their PayPal account, and then they would send me a PayPal transfer. They would send money to me through PayPal. PayPal automatically is going to debit the money from your friend's credit card, right? So you've given them the cash, they put on their credit card, they're going to log into their PayPal account, They're gonna, click on the send button on PayPal, and then they're gonna send you the money that you would have put on their credit card. So whatever the equivalent of 5,000 USD is in TT dollars, you can have them send over the equivalent, right? So they send that over. That money leaves their PayPal account, goes into your PayPal account. Once that money hits your PayPal wallet, you could then deposit the funds into your Wise account or your Bank of America account, whatever you choose, right? You could deposit the funds to that account. Once the funds leaves PayPal and gets deposited, well, now you have access to your money without restrictions. So every single month, rather than going and spending the money using my credit card, that same money that I would have used to spend online or to book a ticket or whatever the case is, I would give it to my friend and I would make the transfer and dump it into my Wise account. That way I don't have any limitations. It's still the same money you're using. So if you were gonna go and spend $1,000 on your credit card directly, or whether you take the $1,000 and dump it into Wise or whatever the case is, it's still the same $1,000 that you would have been spending. The only difference is now when you put it into Wise, you put it into a bank account outside of Trinidad and Tobago, you're not going to run into the headache of the limitations or the restrictions of, you've maxed out your USD allocation for the month, and then they ban you from having access to your own money, or when you're traveling with your credit cards and it's constantly getting flagged for suspicious activity because you're using it here, there. Like, you don't want to go through all of that, right? So I'd rather than use my credit cards, I'd rather put the money on my Wise account. So I have a Trinidad credit card. I have not used my Trinidad credit card since I've been in Thailand. I would use the funds and put it directly into my Wise account so I get away from the restrictions. So you need that two-man game to do that with PayPal, right? Since most credit cards are blocked from that direct upload into Wise. So you give the money to your friend, they're going to put on their credit card, they have PayPal, you have PayPal, they're going to send you the money from their PayPal account to your PayPal account, and then you can deposit the funds into Wise, right? And again, that just basically, rather than you using your credit card to do the exact same purchase, when it's put into Wise or put into an account outside of Trinidad, you just get away from the restrictions of you maxing out your USD allocation, that type of thing, right? So that's how I've been really navigating the situation with the foreign exchange, learning how to generate my own foreign exchange, right? Critical, getting clients. I keep on telling people now is an amazing time to start looking at remote jobs, remote opportunities, learning in-demand skills. That way you can start to freelance. Once you start to get clients or once you get a job outside of Trinidad, you want to ensure that you also have a bank account outside of Trinidad. Whether it's in another Caribbean island, no problem. Whether it's in the States, whether it's in the UK, whatever, whether it's Wise, whatever the case is, you want to have a bank account outside of Trinidad and Tobago. That way, when you're getting paid by your clients, you're getting paid by these remote jobs, those funds can go directly into those accounts, and now you have access to your money. Because if you decide to get paid, if you open up a local U.S. account and you decide to get paid, they're not going to give you access to your money. I'll give you a story. There's a guy that made a video the other day, and he works for a tech company outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Got a job is paying really nice. He's getting paid in US dollars. So the first thing he did was he opened up a bank account, a USD bank account with the bank that he banks with. He gets paid. The company pays him to his local USD account. He's extremely happy because he's looking at a whole lot of USD that he has worked his ass off for, and it's sitting in his account. He goes into the bank and he says, "Okay, bank, I have money. I have USD in my account that I have worked for. I would like to get 200 USD, please. I got some bills to pay." They said, "Nope, sorry, you can't have access to it. We don't have it to give." So he's like, "What do you mean? Like, this is my money that I've generated. What do you mean you can't give me my money?" They're like, "Well, what do you need the money for?" They're like, he's like, "I don't have to tell you what I need the money for. It's my money. I have bills to pay. Like, give me my money." And they told him no, he cannot get the money. Only thing he could do was sell the bank, the US, and they give him TT. That was the only way he was getting any form of money. So naturally, he's pissed, and he went on social media and made a whole, rant about it or whatever. Nothing got solved. The only thing he could do was, convert that money. But this is the challenge. When you start to generate your own USD and you bring it back into the country, because, why wouldn't you not want to do that? You're not getting access to it. And if you don't have access to the money that you're working for, worse yet, when you're having to convert that funds into TT, where you can do nothing outside of Trinidad and Tobago with that money, what do people expect you to do? So the situation is not ideal. We have to have supplemental bank accounts outside of Trinidad and Tobago, right, in order to function. For any of you that are talking about taxes and tax fraud and tax evasion, because apparently in Trinidad, people think that when you have a bank account outside of your home country, that's tax fraud and tax evasion. Shows how little people actually know, right? But for any of you that have your accounts outside another country, you simply need to do what you're always doing. Speak with your local accountant that's helping you to manage your affairs, and let them know, hey, I am generating my own money. It's going to this outside account, and they will know what to do. They will ensure that you are on top of your taxes when it come time to filing your taxes and making sure that you are good to go. So there's no issues with you having an outside bank account. There's no issues with you not bringing back that foreign exchange to the country. You're still paying your taxes. You're still living in the country, right? So you're still going to be spending your money inside the country. You don't need to bring back the foreign exchange to the country. You're paying your taxes and you're living in the country. So the country's still making money off of your head. But you can't afford to do that if you don't have access to your money. And if you don't have access, especially if you're in business, if you don't have access to foreign exchange to be able to conduct your business, then crap will smoke your pipe. Everybody's in problems. Everybody's on the breadline. So if you're not learning how to navigate this situation with the foreign exchange, you're going to be running into a shit ton of problems. And now, because the leadership does not have a short-term or medium-term plan, we don't even have a long-term plan, matter of fact. But because of how far we have kicked the can, there is no short-term or medium-term solutions that don't have more cons than pros. Our short-term and medium-term options are problematic no matter how you slice it, right? They're not enough to help us. And we don't have a long-term plan yet. But the long-term plan is what it's always been. It's going to be diversification. It's going to be building up other industries to start to generate more foreign exchange. That is the long-term plan. The details of that plan is what has not been fleshed out by any of our governments. Hence, we have never diversified the economy. Like, no government has ever diversified the economy. So it is what it is, right? There's no just one group to blame more than the next. However, that's a long-term plan. The short-term and medium-term solutions are not good. They're not good. And the government has already come out and said that they're not going to be devaluing the dollar. They're not going to be floating the dollar. They're just going to continue on as they have been doing. And as the country continues to bleed and lose more foreign exchange and not generate enough, restrictions are going to get tighter and tighter. And since I've been in Trinidad, every single year, the restrictions have gotten more tighter. The allocations have reduced every single year since I've been in Trinidad. This is just at the point now where we've reached the lowest amount that we've ever had. And I honestly believe that 2025, we are going to see a situation where, one, because we're already seeing with the debit cards have been reduced to zero USD allocation. RBC is still giving you some USD allocation, but monitor that because that could change. But Scotiabank has removed all access to USD on their Visa debit cards, so you can't use them outside of Trinidad. So it's not far off that 2025, the credit cards themselves could be reduced to zero USD allocation, and you could only use those cards in Trinidad and Tobago The other scenario that we're seeing being talked about heavily is that maybe the banks go the direction of manual approval. So you want to conduct a transaction that involves USD, you might go through a manual approval process. The banks might manually approve that purchase. And you already know that doesn't sound like it's going to be feasible, nor does it sound like it's going to be a good thing. But the reality is, every single year, the restrictions have gotten tighter, the USD allocations have dropped. And I firmly believe we'll see a zero USD allocation for next year. That being said, you have to take your own personal responsibility during these murky water times and figuring out how are you going to start to generate your own USD? How are you going to access your own USD? What are you going to do to be able to survive during these times? Because you cannot survive without access to the foreign markets. You got to do something at some point, whether it's medical, whether it's you're sending kids to school, whether you have to buy things online, whether you have to whatever the case is, whether you have to travel, you have to do something at some point that involves tapping into the market outside of Trinidad and Tobago. If you're one of the people that literally do nothing outside of the confines of TNT, great, this is not for you. But I already know that everybody listening to this podcast does things outside of TNT. So the question remains, what are you going to be doing to secure yourself in navigating the foreign exchange crisis that we are in? Are you going to be generating your own foreign exchange? Do you have the accounts necessary to keep your own foreign exchange so that you have access to it? What are you going to be doing? I'm very interested. Don't forget, you could leave a comment and kind of talk about, what you're doing, if you're worried, anything. But I'm very interested to know, and we're going to have to start to share a lot of knowledge in terms of figuring out how we can navigate this. I've put this out there. Again, like I said, I've taken heat for it. There's a lot of people that disagree with what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that this is what we are forced to do given the circumstances, because I can't function without not having access to the international markets. I travel, I get booked for work, I do things, period, outside of TNT. So regardless of what, I would always need to have access to USD and have access to it 100%. I cannot be financially trapped in Trinidad. I cannot allow myself to be in that situation because that's the death of my business. All right. So let me know in the comments, what are you doing to navigate the foreign exchange situation? Are you worried? Do you see us being in a situation where we hit $0 on for USD allocation on the credit cards in 2025, given that every year for the last 10 years, 11 years, we have been increasingly reducing the USD allocation every single year? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. That's it for me on today's episode on how I have been navigating the foreign exchange crisis here in Trinidad and Tobago. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate the podcast. If you're listening in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can rate the podcast. If you really enjoyed the podcast and you want to help a brother out, leave a review either on Apple Podcasts or on iTunes or on YouTube as well. Those reviews help tremendously because people read and they watch the reviews in order to figure out whether or not they want to listen to the podcast. So do your boy a favor. I don't ever ask for much. Please drop a review, rate the podcast. Those things tremendously help continue to grow the podcast all over the world. Don't forget, you can check me out at KaronRose.com to learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms. You can also check out the Digipreneur.fm website to stay up to date on everything happening with the podcast. You can also follow me on social media of your choice. I'm available on all social media platforms at KeronRosc on any platform of your choice. I'm most active on LinkedIn, Instagram, and also on TikTok. I'm most active on those platforms. But yeah, man, don't, reach out. And please leave a comment. I'm really interested to see how you guys have been navigating the foreign exchange situation here in TNT. All right. That is it from me, everybody. Enjoy your Tuesday. It's Tuesday midday for me here. I know the rest of the world it's Monday night. All right, so enjoy your Tuesday morning. Well, I'm recording this Tuesday midday. You will hear this bright and early 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. All right. Ciao, everybody. Take care. Don't forget to leave those comments. Let us know how you're navigating the situation. Okay? Take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karan Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karan Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.